I'm on a mission to beat 100 video games every year, and I just finished ICO for the very first time, and I have a lot to say. There are things about this PS2 classic that I love. The problem is that they are completely drowned out by the things that I hate. The fuck is it so cold in here? I really do appreciate that this feels like a lovable indie game in a time before indie games were really even a thing. You get the sense that the plot has very deep lore, even though what they explicitly tell you is very vague. Kinda like what Souls-likes made popular, but almost a decade earlier. Matter of fact, I recently read that Miyazaki, the creator of the Dark Souls games, was actually inspired to make video games by this game. So that kinda checks out. The art and sound design gives you a daunting sense of scale by surrounding the small boy with all these giant structures. You really do feel tiny and insignificant when even your loudest cries are dampened by the wind just blowing through these ancient buildings. The puzzle design is hard enough to be a real challenge for someone like me who isn't particularly good at puzzles, but mostly in a way that was satisfying once I finally came to the solutions. In other words, the game is full of great ideas. The problem is the moment-to-moment execution, which I found to be fucking torture most of the time. Let's start with this girl you're dragging around. The entire experience is basically an escort mission, and it's somehow even worse than that sounds. This girl is so useless, she makes Ashley Graham look like fucking RoboCop. And when you're fighting to keep these shadow dudes from dragging her away, you're just pushing square over and over. You only have one attack, and it doesn't appear you can die in combat, or at least I never did, so have fun just pushing square until everything is dead. The puzzles are very good on paper, but all of the traversal mechanics like jumping, climbing, ledge grabbing, etc. are all horribly imprecise and very often lead you to inadvertently hurling yourself off a ledge. Or right when you make a tricky jump, your fucking coked out camera will suddenly lurch in multiple directions, and suddenly up on your analog stick is no longer up, it's now left, and again you fall to your death. And almost every time that kind of thing happens, you lose 10, 15 minutes of progress because the manual checkpoint system is fucking stingy with the save points. I realize some of this is simply a product of the PS2 era, but I'm not sure I can accept that as an excuse anymore. I just got done playing the original Ratchet & Clank last month, which is only a year newer than this, and all that stuff was great. The camera, the controls, the traversal, everything, so I know it could be done right. All in all, I am glad I finally played this because I want to see how Team ICO grows in the future when I play The Last Guardian and eventually their new game that comes out in the future. But if you offered me $100 to play through this again, I would flatly refuse. Is that a fucking helicopter? The fuck? Is it getting closer? I recognize this is probably a very important game objectively, and I imagine a lot of people loved it when it was new, but I rank every game I beat by how happy it made me, so I ranked this 11 out of the 11 games I've beaten so far this year, and 536 out of the 564 games I've beaten since the beginning of 2020. If you're a fan of this game, I'm sorry I didn't like it, and you can go off on me in the comments, it's okay, I mean, what do I know? Next time we'll be playing Far Cry 3 Blood Dragon for the very first time, which I know pretty much nothing about, so feel free to follow if you want to see where that one ends up on the rankings and why.